Hello, everybody. William Mayette, creator of Jazz Edge, and I want to welcome you to Standards by the Dozen. So we got a lot to cover today. I want to say a quick hello. I can't say hello to everybody. I got a bunch of people coming on. There's over 118 people already on. Fred, Frank, Francia, Elaine, hello, George, Jeff, Joe, Jody, John, Jorge, Joseph, Jude, Leslie. Just got people from all over. Marcus, hello, Marlene, Martin. So there's just too many of you to say hello to, but I just want to know, I want you to know that I'm welcoming all of you. To all of my friends on YouTube and Facebook, thanks for joining me today. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Standards by the Dozen. Standards by the Dozen is a new way to learn jazz standards. I have not done a course like this, and I'm going to explain it as we go. So let's dig in. So first of all, who am I? If you don't know me, I have done quite a bit over the years. Here's some brief bullet points. I didn't have formal lessons until I was 14. Up until that point, my dad used to teach me. I used to learn jazz by reading his John Mahegan books, David Baker, Jamie Aebersold. Those names probably ring true and familiar to you guys as well if you've been trying to learn jazz. I got a scholarship to Berklee College of Music when I was in high school. Ended up going to Berklee. After Berklee, I created my Jazz Kids program, which then morphed into homeschool piano. And then I created my online programs 20 years ago. Can you believe it? It's been 20 years that I have been teaching online. So I've been doing this for quite a while and really have started to iterate and codify, over the years, what it is that I've been learning and through teaching and through playing myself. So I have several different albums that I've recorded, 2 with my own group, Katahdin's Edge, Step Away, and The Ridge. Those are 2 albums that we recorded, but I've been on many other people's albums and, had a chance to do stuff with the Jazz Kids program and just a whole bunch of cool recording sessions. You can see, on Amazon, you can get those CDs. There's a picture of me over at the South by Southwest Festival. Hair's a little bit longer there. That's me digging into the piano, and I used to do, use muted strings and stuff like that. That was at the Elephant Room. So that was a great time playing at South by Southwest. So let's talk about what you're going to learn today. Today, by the end of today's session, you're going to know how jazz musicians interpret a melody. All right. So when we look at a lead sheet, we don't just play the lead sheet just straight, as the melody is. We usually interpret it. I'm going to show you some of those tips and tricks today as well. You're going to learn how to create a super simple arrangement just utilizing chord shells, all right? We're also going to learn how to form these rootless chord voicings, so you're going to get a better understanding of that. You're going to learn how to create a bass line. I'm going to show you a bass line. We're going to break that down. I'm going to show you the elements that are being used in that bass line. And then you're also going to learn some two-handed comping. This is really important if you want to accompany yourself, back up other soloists, or maybe you sing and you want to accompany yourself while singing. Those two-handed comping patterns are going to be super important for that as well. And then, of course, we're also going to talk about improvisation and how you can utilize the confident improviser to be able to improvise over jazz standards. So I want to remind you, this is going to be an interactive session. So later in the session, I will be answering your questions. So feel free to chat in your questions. If you're on YouTube, you can go ahead and chat in. If you're on Facebook, you could chat in your question there as well. If you're joining me on Zoom, there's a Q&A button. You can go ahead and ask your question there. I will also go through the chat area as well if time permits. But if you're on Zoom, please use the Q&A section to ask your questions rather than just putting it in the chat. That way I don't miss it, okay? Now, if you have not done so already, you can go to jazzedge.com/live, and there is a link there. And in fact, let me just load this up real quick for you. So you can see exactly what that looks like, and you can grab the sheet music for that. Whoops. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. All right, so once you're on that page, if you just click right here, that's obviously to join this session, and then click right there, you can go ahead and download these resources, all right? So be sure that you go ahead and do that so that you have those resources available while we are, doing the session. There will also be a session replay, so don't worry if you have to kind of duck out. I know sometimes these sessions go long, especially when I'm answering questions, so if you have to leave, don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. There will be a replay, so as long as you registered for the training, you will get that replay. You'll get that replay video, okay? So don't worry about that. So now, let's talk about what's new in this course. All right, so with 35 years of experience teaching, let me tell you some of the stuff that I have found over the past 35 years when it comes to not just improvisation, but just students trying to learn how to play jazz. Remember, I started with jazz kids and teaching young kids how to be able to play jazz and improvise. And then, like I said, I've been doing this online for 20 plus years now. And then that's where I started to go directly to adults and teach them. So I have a lot of experience in breaking down these, more complicated concepts. And really, that's what my skill level is. If you've seen any of my stuff, you probably already know that I go into a lot of detail. It's very step-by-step. It's really broken down. And I really try and serve my students through a lot of live, interactive coaching sessions, live sessions, office hours, etc. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. All right, so the first thing is it all comes down to repertoire. All right, so when we're talking, I have my Piano Essentials program, and that's for like all of your technique and stuff. But when it comes down to it, like, all right, yeah, great. All right, let's do some handing. All right, now let me just go through and do all rootless chord voicings. Yeah, let me practice these rootless chord voicings as well. Yeah, okay, great. Does anybody really want to hear that? No, they want to hear you play a song. Right? You want to hear a song. And that's what audience members usually want to hear is a song, not a bunch of scales, right? So they don't want to see the sausage being made. They want to hear the end result. So repertoire is hugely important. And I found that over the years, many students don't really focus on that repertoire. Well, all of that is going to change in Standards by the Dozen. You're really going to learn to develop a repertoire, and not just in one way, but using multiple different methods, right? So repertoire is the first thing. The next thing I found is it's very difficult to move to a new stage, right? We talk about leveling up or moving to a different phase, or, you're going to get to the next level. Well, the reality is that those stages are very difficult to move between, especially if there is not a unified method combining those stages together. All of that changes in Standards by the Dozen. So there are 6 stages that we go through in the Standards by the Dozen lessons. The very first thing is we go through a lead sheet, where you understand the lead sheet, how to play the lead sheet, how to play that melody, how to interpret that lead sheet, and what you do with it. The next thing is we start to add on some simple chord shells to create a basic arrangement. So if you're a beginner, you've never played standards before, those 2 first stages are going to be perfect for beginners. So if you're a beginner, don't worry. There's plenty of material here for you. And there's also material that allows you to grow into the program. Right now, if you're more intermediate to advanced, we're also going to go into rootless chords with the melody. We're going to talk about how to form bass lines along with the melody. We're going to do two-hand accompany, and then we're also going to be utilizing improvisation. Now, in these lessons, I'm not going to be diving super deep into, hey, like, okay, this is how you form this and this is how you form this, because I get it, all right? When you sit down, you watch a video, you want to get right into it. You want to start playing it quickly. You don't want to hear me go on and talk a bunch, all right? So doing the same thing that I'm doing in my Confident Improviser program, there's going to be a lot more of actually you doing it. And then you performing it and doing call and response along with me, and then finally following up with Q&A and live sessions, right? So it's really a great program. If you've wanted to learn standards, this is going to get you there. So the other thing is that, like, as I was just saying, it's easier to learn by doing, but you need to try first. And the way this, the course is going to be structured, you will have an opportunity to try it first, then you watch me, can ask me questions, and then we follow up, and then you can get feedback. So there's always questions, right? You need feedback. So, I remember years ago when I was trying to learn jazz, right? I got the Jamie Aebersold stuff, the play-alongs, and those were great, to play along with a band, right? Not necessarily live, but in a recorded form. And you're going to get all of those resources to be able to play along with the band. I'm going to show you some of that today. We're going to use iReal Pro, and I'm going to explain all of that. But the thing is, you need feedback. You need feedback on your playing, right? There's always questions that you have. And no matter how many times you watch a lesson video, have you found it's like, okay, there's something in the lesson video, and it's like, hey, look, you want to be able to ask the question. Well, unfortunately, a lot of times with a lot of online programs, it's difficult for you to actually be able to get to the teacher. That's different here at Jazz Edge. When you write in, you're literally writing in, and I read the email, or Jamie in the other room reads the email. It's just us. That's it. So I get and I see all of that. All of the live sessions, I'm the one who teaches all of those live sessions. And any students that are on right now, you could go ahead and chat in, and you can hear from other students, ask them about the live sessions and what it's done for them to be able to really have that, not only that accountability, right, but then also to be part of a community, and then of course be able to get feedback on their playing and be able to ask questions, so you're not going for weeks and months scratching your head thinking, am I doing this right? You will know if you're doing it right or not, right? So the coaching sessions and live sessions are absolutely fantastic, and we get such a great group of students that are really supportive of one another, and you're really going to love the Standards by the Dozen sessions as well. All right, so here's the solution that I have realized when it comes to learning standards for students. Number one, it's, I've usually done lessons in which here's a recorded video, or maybe it's a live video, and there's resources along with it. There you go. Go ahead and do it, and then you can follow up later. What I've found, though, is that system is not always the best, because it doesn't allow you the opportunity to try it on your own first. So Standards by the Dozen is really kind of turning all of this on its head, in that you are going to have a week with the material in which you could download all of the resources, all the sheet music, be able to go through it, practice it for a week, right? And then try it out. See if you could do it on your own. See if you understand it on your own. Then I'm going to a week later do the step-by-step videos. There's going to be videos, there's going to be resources, you'll have the play-along tracks, you'll have the videos, you'll have the sheet music, all of that, just like I do for all of my other lessons. And these videos are going to be presented live, just like this, but it's going to be live in like a regular Zoom call in which you could then interact, share your screen if you want to, or share your playing, and then you can get some, answers to your questions as I'm doing the video, right? So as I'm doing the video, I'm going to record the video, and then it's going to be just like today's session. At the end, I'm going to say, okay, who has questions? And then it gives you an opportunity to ask your questions, right? So that's the first opportunity that you will have to be able to ask your questions. Then I'm also going to be doing a monthly Q&A session, just like I do for the Confident Improviser, just like I do for coaching, in which then you can actually, share your playing and get feedback on your playing. And I'd say, hey, Bill, that's really good. Why don't you try doing this? Okay, Sally, I really like what you did there. Why don't you try doing that? Okay, John, you got a question, John? All right, what's your question, John? And it's very interactive, right? And it's a great way to make sure that you're on track and that you're staying focused. Because the reality is that I have heard literally, it's probably now in the thousands of times, but definitely hundreds of times, students say, you got so much stuff on your website, I get steered off by the next shiny object, right? I'm always releasing new lessons, so then it's like you get steered off. With this program, you don't have to worry because you'll stay on track. Join in on those sessions, and if you can't join in live, as a member, don't worry, all of that stuff is recorded. You can always catch up later and watch the replays of all of that. All right, so what Standards by the Dozen does is it makes it easier and faster for you to be able to actually learn and then also retain your standards, all right? That's the other problem that students have had. Hey, I learned an arrangement for a standard, but I don't know how to play it again. And typically the reason for that is that there is no theory that's going along with the lesson, all right? So you might learn the arrangement, but you don't really understand the theory that's going on. You really don't understand why are you playing this, and that means that now you can't master your standards, because mastery means that you could sit down at any time of day or night and someone says, hey, look, I want you to play Days of Wine and Roses, and you could sit down and just play it, right? In order to be able to do that, in order to be able to retain that material, you have to have a better working understanding of the material at hand. In Standards by the Dozen, we're going to go through all of that. So you're going to actually understand what it is that you're playing, why you're playing it, and then by doing it on a new standard every single month, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to be presented with a new idea. You're going to play that idea, practice that idea, and then we're going to go back and we're going to refresh and follow up and see if there's any questions. So going through that process, you're really going to start to lock in your standards and, in turn, build out your repertoire. All right, so ready to get started? Let's move on. All right, so first of all, we're going to start by talking about lead sheets. So here we have an example. Here's the first couple of bars of Days of Wine and Roses. Now, this is going to be the first standard that we start with in Standards by the Dozen. And today we're just going to go through a little bit of the process so you can kind of get an idea of what's in store. All right, so first of all, if we just take a look at the standard here, and then what I'm going to do is I have special iReal Pro backing tracks that I have made that go along directly with these chord changes. That's the other thing too, is a lot of times, you'll download an iReal Pro track from their forum or something, and then the chord changes don't really match up to what it is that's being taught in the lesson. You don't have to worry about that. I've created my own iReal Pro backing tracks, so you can download those, bring them into your own iReal Pro application, and then this way, the chords that you're working on in iReal Pro are exactly the same chords that you're going to find in the arrangement itself. All right, so now I've done lessons on melodic embellishment. You can take a look at my 12 Days of Jazz Standards. There's a great chapter in there on melodic embellishment. But let's just, let me play what's here along with the backing track, and then you tell me if this sounds jazzy or not. right? So it doesn't really sound all that jazzy, does it? Let me play it again now, and then you take a listen to the difference. Okay, so now it's a little bit jazzier at that time. Now, of course, we could get into a whole debate. Oh, that doesn't sound jazzy enough to me. I don't really like that rhythm. And you know what? Again, doing this for 20 years, I know I'm going to get all the negative comments on YouTube and all of that. Like, that's not jazz. Okay, sure, that's fine. I could take it. I got a thick skin. The reality, though, is playing what's here as written sounds pretty flat. We know that we want to add in some rhythm, right? We know that we want to kind of change that rhythm around. One thing to notice that I did not do, I didn't change any of the notes, okay? And sometimes students think that like, oh, in order to interpret this melody, I need to actually now start to change notes and do more melodic actual embellishment, in which I'm doing... I need to do stuff like that. And the reality is that, no, I don't have to change those notes. I could start by just changing the rhythm. What are some different ways in which I change the rhythm? Well, one thing that I'll do is I will start to utilize more upbeats and more syncopation. And before I show you that, let's answer the question, well, why don't they write it like that, right? Why write a lead sheet like this with this rhythm when you're never really going to play it like that? And the best reason I can come up with is, well, we got to start someplace, okay? And usually what you want to do when you have a jazz lead sheet is you want to write it out in the most simplified manner to give the player the artistic liberty to do whatever it is that they want to do, right? Now, some players might literally just play it literally as written, okay? All right, so you could do that. It's not going to sound super jazzy, but, it will work. Whereas other players are going to start to interpret that melody and start to change around that rhythm. But we don't want to change the rhythm in the lead sheet. We want to keep it simplified like that because we want to allow the player the freedom to be able to do what they want to do. If I wrote in, a bunch of different alterations to the rhythm, well, now that's my idea of how I would interpret the melody. You don't have to interpret the melody the same way that I do, and vice versa. Right? It's really up to each one of us to kind of hear that melody and create our own interpretation of this. Right? And this is what we're going to be going through in Standards by the Dozen. I will give you some examples. I'll give you some different ideas of what it is that you could do. And then you could take those ideas and try them or come up with your own ideas. So one thing I would do is when I see something like this in which it's just straight ba, 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 right? Those straight quarter notes, I'm going to change those into some eighth notes, right? This, right? Ba, 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 right? Da, da, da. I might take this note right here and then kind of, add an eighth note in front of it and do a little bit of an anticipation. Remember, an anticipation is when we have something that is resolving before it would normally resolve, usually on a downbeat. So here, this is on beat 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of like interpret that melody and bring it in a little bit before beat 3. So then that sounds like this. Wait. Okay, so you can hear now it starts to sound a little bit more jazzy. It starts to sound a little bit more shapely, right? There's more of a shape to that melody. Now, the other thing that you could do is you could listen to classic recordings, listen to Ella Fitzgerald or Frank Sinatra or anyone else that you could hear singing the melody of this, and then you could kind of mimic that as well. So there are many different options in how you can interpret that melody. But the first way that we start is just by doing a little bit of rhythmic alteration to the melody. So one good way of doing that is, change some of the quarter notes into eighth notes, maybe do a little anticipation, kind of delay this note, and then, do an eighth rest here, and then start with that G on the and of 2 rather than right on 2. So by adding in some of that syncopation, it now starts to really make that melody shine and sparkle a lot more. Okay, moving on. So let's talk now about shells and simple arrangement. Take a look at this first of all and see what I'm doing. So here, let me play it for you, okay? And then we'll talk about what's going on. Whoops, I should have came in with that C a little sooner, sorry. Okay, so here in the left hand, I'm playing my simplified chord shells. So what is a chord shell? Well, first of all, you have to know what the 7th chords are. If you do not know your 7th chords, if you take a look at my Piano Essentials program, you could get all of your 7th chords that are all written out for you in all 12 keys. So it's an easy way of being able to go through and learn all of those 7th chords, block chords, right? So typically an F major 7th chord would be this. We don't want to play it down here because it's obviously too low, right? And then we go E flat. Sounds muddy and too low down there, right? So instead what we do is we take out the guts of the chord. So rather than playing the 3rd and the 5th in there, we just play the chord shell. The chord shell is typically going to be the root and the 7th of the chord, or the root and the 3rd of the chord. Okay? So here I'm playing the root and the 7th. When I go down to E flat 7, I play the root and the 7th as well. When I go to A minor, I'm playing the root and the 7th. And when I go to D7, I play the root and the 3rd. This is a great example of some nice motion down here, the A minor to the D7. Notice I didn't go root 7 up to root 7. Well, why? Because I would have to lift all of my notes, all of my fingers, and then move someplace else on the keyboard. And then anytime I lift off the keyboard and I'm moving like like an arm of a record player, I have more of a chance of skipping, right? And then hitting the wrong note. Maybe I just, whoops, okay, right? And then okay, we don't want to do that. So to avoid that, these shells make it a lot easier to keep your chord voicings, with good voice leading. So here, when I move from the A minor to the D7, I'm simply just using the root 3. So root 7, then going down to root 3. So. There's your G minor, okay? So now you notice that I interpreted the melody, even though the melody is written. So, right, I'm going to interpret that melody, and just like I did in the previous section on the lead sheet, I'm going to take some of those ideas and I'm going to bring them in, even though it is not written here, okay? So that's one of the things that gets a little bit challenging sometimes for students, that, wait, not everything is written out. Well, no, not everything is written out. And then this is, again, what you're going to start to learn. You're going to start to learn how to feel comfortable being able to interpret that standard on your own, right? I'm going to give you those skills so that you feel comfortable being able to interpret these standards without having to have every single thing written out. Because the reality is, if you're looking for everything to be written out all of the time, then just buy the arrangement of somebody doing Days of Wine and Roses, read it on down, and then there you go. But it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to just pick up a lead sheet, come up with your own arrangement, if you never have tried to interpret that lead sheet melody and tried to come up with your own stuff. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to guide you through that, but also, in a loving way, force you to have to do more of this interpretation on your own. All right, so those are the shells. Moving on, let's talk about rootless chord voicings, or some people call them Bill Evans chord voicings. If you're not familiar with Bill Evans, famous jazz pianist, definitely check him out. Wrote Waltz for Debbie, a lot of other great tunes that he played, but definitely check out Bill Evans. He is a fantastic pianist. All right, so now let's talk about these rootless chord voicings. So here I have F major 7, and then I'm going up to E flat 7, and then A minor 7, and then D7. Don't get confused here. You look at this right here and you're like, oh, wait, that says B natural. Why is he playing B flat? You gotta remember that key signature, okay? Remember that key signature means that all the B's in this are flatted unless there's a natural. So that B should be flatted, okay? The other thing you'll notice is that this says D7 flat 9, okay? But then you'll also notice that that note is a flat 13. I'll come back to that in just a second. Let's go back to F major and talk about how these rootless chords are formed. Well, the very first thing that you need to understand is you have to understand what the notes of just the regular block chord are to begin with. So you have to know, all right, F major 7, right? And I'm going to give you 2 ways of looking at forming these rootless chords. Remember, you want to be able to look at things in many different ways, and that's how you're going to get the real complete picture, right? Imagine that you showed a globe to somebody, right? And, I don't know, Africa was right on the globe right there. And you never spun the globe for somebody to see what's on the other side. Well, guess what? They might not even know that other continents exist. You have to spin it. You have to look at it from many different vantage points in order to get the full picture. All right, so 2 different ways of looking at rootless chord voicings. For a major 7th chord, the first thing you could do is I'm going to play the root down here just so you can hear the root of the chord. Because if I don't play the root, it's kind of hard to hear that that's an F chord, right? So the first thing you do, so this down here, just imagine the bass player is playing that. And imagine, even though I'm playing this in my right hand right now, I would normally play this in my left hand. All right, so the first thing is, there's my regular F major 7th, just plain old block chord. Okay? So one way of forming the major 7th rootless chord voicing is go to the 3rd, and you create a minor 7th chord on that note. So I go to the 3rd, which is A, and I make an A minor 7 chord. Again, see how if you don't know what an A minor 7 chord is, then you're going to be in trouble because you're going to be hunting around trying to figure that out. So also remember, if you're a beginner and it's like, whoa, I'm not there yet, you don't have to do the rootless chords, right? You could just do the lead sheet, you could do the shells, and you could go through all your standards and learn all your standards just with simplified shells. And guess what? You're going to get a great sound, and it's going to sound really good along with the backing track. But as you start to, gain more skill, now you could add on these rootless chord voicings. So for major, go up to the 3rd and create a minor 7th chord on that note. This gives you the 3rd of F, the 5th of F, the 7th of F, and the 9th. Okay, so that's the first way in which you can form the rootless chord voicing. The other way that you could form it is you start with your guide tones, which is your 3rd and your 7th. And then you're going to have one note that comes between the guide tones and one note that goes above, right? So there's always going to be one note that happens in between the guide tones and one note that happens above, all right? So in between, you add the 5th, and then we add in the 9th. It's another way of looking at it. Now, you might say, oh, wait a second, though. That's this voicing, but you just played this, Willie. So what's the deal with this versus this, right? There are basically 2 forms of our rootless chords, okay? This is the first form with the 3rd in the bottom, okay? So the 3rd is the bottom note. The other one is with the 7th as the bottom note. So you notice all I did was I took these 2 notes down here, I lifted up and I moved them here, up an octave, same 2 notes, but I'm playing them all together like this. So there's my F major 7th rootless chord voicing, this time with the 7th on the bottom. So I don't play it up here because I don't have to play it way up there. I can play it right down here. I get more of the meat or tenor section of the piano. So there's F major 7 or F major 7. Okay? Both voicings are absolutely fine. It's up to you to decide which ones you want to use. I chose this one because then it wouldn't conflict so much with the melody. If I did that, it's a little bit close, so I just kind of stayed away a little bit. You'll also see that I wrote in here, you'll likely want to play the melody up an octave to avoid collisions. And I'll explain this more in the standards by the dozen, but you could kind of change octaves as you go. You could bring the melody up an octave for a little bit, then bring it down. You have the liberty to do that, or you could just make a decision and say, hey, look, I'm going to play the melody all the way up an octave, or there's also some advanced ways in which you could still play the melody down an octave, but remove some of those notes of the rootless chord so you don't get conflicts. And I'll explain all of that in the course as we go. All right, so we have F major 7, F major 7. Now, some people call this the A form and then the B form, or the A form and the B form. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I really don't know which one is the A form or the B form, and it really doesn't matter, all right? It doesn't matter which one you call A or B. You're not going to be communicating this to other musicians. All right, so rootless chord voicing in A form. Now, this is more for your own knowledge. Just know there are two different voicings. Now, just quickly before I move on, you might say, well, wait a second. Can I also do it like that, right? Can I do this in which I have the 9th down here? Or can I also do it in which I have like the 5th down here? Yes, those are other voicings, and students have asked, hey, should I learn those? And I would say, look, you learn those after you have completely mastered these two forms. And the reality is, you may never have to play that form or what's this one? That form either, okay? So you might never have to play either of those two forms of your rootless voicings. So you're best just to start with the A and the B. All right, so F major 7. There's my rootless chord voicing for F major 7. When I go to E flat, now let's go through the tips for that. So first of all, I start with E flat 7. So the way to create a dominant 7th rootless chord voicing, go down to the flatted 7th, the dominant 7th, make a major 7th chord on that note. So here's D flat major 7th, and then flat that 5th of that chord, and now you have E flat 7. This gives you the 7th, the 9th, the 3rd, and the 13th of your E flat dominant 7th chord. In case you're wondering, 9 and 13, why isn't it 2 and 6? There is plenty of lessons on the site on rootless chord voicings in which I explain that, but basically it's because these are chord tensions. They are not notes of the chord, all right? All right, so that's one way of doing it. The thing though is that, you know, like that two-step process like that, you know, it's not always the easiest way of seeing those dominant 7th voicings. So the way that I like to teach it instead is utilizing those guide tones. You have the 3rd, the 7th, and then on a dominant 7th chord, we have the 13th. So again, one note in between the guide tones. There's my 13th, and it's always a half step away from the flatted 7th. And then I have my 9th right up above. So there, and the other inversion of that is there. Okay, so A form, B form, A form, B form. Typically, I call the A form the one with the 3rd on the bottom, and the B form the one with the 7th on the bottom. So it's up to you, though. Okay, so again, F major 7th, and then E flat 7. Now, when I go to A minor 7, here's my A minor 7 chord. So to create an A minor 7 rootless chord voicing, this one is actually quite simple. Go up to the minor 3rd, which is C, and create a major 7th chord. And there's your A minor 7th chord. And then in this particular inversion, I'm taking these two notes and I'm bringing them down here, and that gives me my B form of the A minor 7th chord. So again, F major 7, E flat 7, A minor 7. Now when I go to D7, I have D7, I have the 3rd, the 7th. Let's do the note above. I'm going to add in the flat 9 because the chord is telling me flat 9, but then I also add in flat 13. Okay? And the reason that I add in flat 13 is because I know that flat 13 works really well along with a flat 9 chord. Okay? I can also look at this and see that, like, ooh, that natural 13th there is really going to rub with that melody note too, right? So like, whereas that sounds a lot better with the flat 13. Okay? And then these are things that you're going to learn as we move on with, you know, the standards by the dozen. Okay? What's great is that we're going to have a lot of real world experience. You're going to be able to see how these concepts actually apply to standards. That's what's going to help you to be able to lock it in better. F major 7th, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7 with the flat 13. I will also end up explaining again, you know, in the lessons, well, why is this not written as D7, flat 9, flat 13? And the reason is that we like to keep our chord voicings clean. When you're looking at a lead sheet, right, and you see a bunch of stuff added to a chord. D7, flat 9, sharp 11, flat 13, right? It adds too much, and the reality is that you want to be able to read these chords quickly, and also you want to be able to read them on a bandstand in which it might not be nicely lit like it is right here. It might be kind of dark, right? So everything is all kind of dark, right? And then I can't see, all of, these chords in that dark setting real quickly. So we write the chord symbol easier. We reduce it, right, by just saying flat 9. And as jazz musicians, we know that when we see flat 9, okay, I know I can add in flat 13. Again, some of this stuff is stuff that you end up learning as you go and as it is applied to actual standards, right? So this is what you're going to get, that application to actual real songs. All right. You know what? I didn't play this along with the band track. This sounds super cool. I mean, this starts to really sound like a jazz player. When you're doing these rootless chord voicings in that left hand like that, you're starting to interpret that melody, starting to add in some, fills and different riffs and improvisation. It really starts to get elevated and sound like a true jazz musician. So you're going to get that sound as well. All right, moving on. Bass line. Let me play it for you. Yeah, I'll play it up here. So the bass line, being able to play a bass line is super important because when we are playing standards, there are basically 2 tracks that we can follow, okay? And really, if we were to boil down piano playing, there's basically 2 paths. There's solo playing and there is group playing. And typically group playing is any time that you have a bass player. If you have somebody who is playing the bass notes, well, in that situation, you don't have to play bass notes. And in fact, you really shouldn't play bass notes unless you guys are, working out something specific that you're playing together. But typically, if you're working with a drummer and a bass player and you're playing piano and you're playing standards, you're going to do those rootless chord voicings in the left hand and then, play the melody and improv in the right hand. But now what happens if you're just accompanying a singer, right? Or if you're playing solo and there's no bass player. Well, doing rootless chord voicing, if I start to improvise, right? I mean, it starts to sound kind of thin, doesn't it? Because we don't have any bass motion going on. So something that's really important is that we learn how to be able to play bass lines. And we're not always going to play a bass line when we play a standard, but you want the ability to kind of weave in and out and be able to say, hey, look, I'm going to play solo. I want a simple arrangement, something quick. Oh, I'm going to play with a group. Or no, I want to be able to play a bass line. And then this is what builds out your arranging skill so that now you're not just stuck with one thing. It's not like, oh, okay, I could play shells and that's it. Or all I could do is rootless chord voicings, or all I can do is play a bass line. No, by learning all of these different techniques, now you can start to bring them all together, right? So you're starting to see how it all starts to tie in together. So now, right? So being able to play that bass line, improvising over the top of it, playing the melody, whatever, sounds really cool. It's a great arranging technique. So let's break down what's going on with this bass line. First of all, we start with the root of the chord on each new chord change. So if you look here, that's F, here, that's E flat, here, that's A, here, that's D. So the very first thing is, right? That's our most basic bass line that we could play. We could then do half notes or quarter notes if we wanted to. Right? We could change the octave, and do some stuff like that. Okay, and that's fine to get started. But then as we start to flesh out that bass line and fill it out a little bit more, we want to add in more notes. Well, the first thing that we could do is this technique right here, root, 5, root. And then this note, the beat 4, a lot of times, is going to be an approach note into the next chord. If you had 2 chords per measure, which eventually we will, right, in the song, then that might be root, approach, root, approach. So let's say, for instance, the E flat chord was right here on beat 3. Well, here on this beat 3, I would be playing what note? An E flat, right? So this would be an F, and then maybe I do an approach note into the E flat, and then I hit the E flat there, all right? But in this particular example, we have 1 chord per measure. So here I have a little bit more space. So I go root, 5, root. And then what did I do? I came back down to the 5th. Now I could have done a half-step approach going down to E natural and then E flat, but instead I just went to my 5th for a chord tone. So there are different options available, and we'll talk about those. And as you start to see these bass lines and as you play the bass lines, now it starts to really kind of get unlocked and you kind of understand, oh, all right, now I get it, because you will have seen these examples over and over and over again. All right, so now what happens on the E flat? So here, once I go to the E flat, I hit the root, 5th, root, but notice I didn't just keep going, I'm also trying to get that wave going on. So you see how there's a kind of going down, up, and then coming back up, right? I'm not just going in one direction with my bass line. So here, root, 5th, root, and then I go back to the 5th, right? And then what did I do here on A? Same idea, root, 5th, root, and here's my approach, all right? So you see what's going on right there? That E flat is my half-step approach into D. And then here, I'm going to my G chord, which you don't see because it's in the next measure, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm doing a walk-up, right? And I'll explain this as well. A lot of times in these walk-ups, what we do is we go up a step and then move chromatically from there, right? So D7, you might say, well, why don't you go to the flat 9, especially since it's a flat 9 chord, because it sounds a little odd, right? So a lot of times it's that natural ninth really sounds kind of nice, even with that, right? Even with that flat 9 chord. But again, you have options, right? You can always kind of change it around if you wanted to, right? So the information is presented, you learn it this way, and then it's up to you if you say, hey, you know what, I want to change it. Absolutely fine. But the first step is learning the concept, being able to play it, apply it to the actual song. Then once you're armed with that information, now you can go ahead and do whatever it is that you want to do. All right, so now this is where the rubber meets the road. Two-handed comping. What do we do for our two-handed comping? Well, let's take a look at this example here. I'm going to play it first of all, and then I'll break it down for you. And I actually anticipated that measure. It really should be on the beat, all right? So here, I mean, isn't that, you got to admit, that's a real nice full sound of your chords. And I am not a singer, but if I were a singer, let's just pretend I am for a second. I don't even remember the words to this tune, but the days of wine and roses. Right? So you can see if I actually had a good voice and I could sing, that would sound really nice backing up a singer. Okay? So this is a great way of being able to back yourself up while singing. Another question that a lot of students have asked over the years. What do I do when I'm going to actually sing or I want to accompany myself? That's what you do right here. Let's break down what's going on. the very first thing to notice is that in this left hand, you're not learning new material. If we go back to our rootless chord voicings here, take a quick peek at those, right? And then if we come back over to here, what do you notice? The left hand is exactly the same rootless chord voicing. So left hand, F major 7, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7 flat 9 with a flat 13. So now what's going on in the right hand? So here I'm using a chordal that's built on the built on the 6th. That works great over your major chords. Here on the E flat, I'm using a chordal that's built on the 3rd. Okay, that works great over dominant chords, right? You could also do that over major chords as well. Okay, so here I have another chordal. When I go to the A minor, what am I doing? I'm using the 7th, the 3rd, and the 5th, right? And this creates just a nice kind of open sound. It's really just a triad, right? It's kind of like an A minor 7 triad of sorts, okay? There's your A minor triad, I'm just replacing it with the 7th, okay? Could I do the A? Sure. Do that as well. And when I go to the D7, this is what we call an upper structure triad. This is a major triad built on the sharp 11, okay? And that gives sharp 11, 7th, flat 9. So now this D7 chord has quite a few alterations in there. There's your 3rd, your flat 13th, your 7th, your flat 9, your sharp 11, your 7th again, right, doubled, and then flat 9, okay, which is also doubled. But those upper structure triads really give you that really nice full jazz sound as well. So what you're going to learn in Standards by the Dozen is you're going to learn these different two-handed voicings. And again, rather than it be a bunch of like explaining, oh, this is why you do it. No, we're going to actually just learn it and do it, right? So that's the secret sauce. You learn by doing. I would rather you be able to sit down, play this along with the backing track, maybe at first not even really fully understanding what you're doing yet, but get it underneath your fingertips, get the sound in your ears, get the whole vibe of it going, get the groove, get the rhythm of it. Then you can always start to understand a little bit later, you know, oh, okay, I start to see some patterns. Every time Willie goes to a major chord, you know, he's throwing in that chordal built on the 3rd or built on the 9th. Okay, that's good to know. Rootless voicing in the left hand, chordal in the right hand. We'll also do things like bell tones as well. So this is where we have an octave going on and maybe another note in between. So you see that bell tone that's happening, which is literally just an octave right now, built on the 9th of F. This becomes the 3rd of E flat. This becomes the 7th of A. This becomes the sharp 11 of D. So, whoa, wait a second. I don't quite understand all of that theory. You know, what's going to happen now in this course when you're talking theory stuff like this or showing it and, you know, you're kind of like blasting through this kind of quick. What am I going to do? Well, that's where at the end of the session, when I'm teaching it live, you can ask me questions on it, but then you also have that follow-up session as well, in which you can ask questions. And of course, as a member of Jazz Edge, you can always join in on coaching. You can join in on office hours. So there are many different opportunities in which you can actually get directly to me, ask me directly the question, not some other teacher, not over chat, not over, you know, email, but actually ask me the question and I can explain it to you live while I'm at the piano. All right, so there's our two-handed voicings. All right, so now let's talk improvisation. So utilizing the ingredients from the Confident Improviser, that's what TCI is, right? The Confident Improviser, we have an incredibly awesome start to our improvisation. If you're not familiar with the Confident Improviser, that's a program for my Jazz Edge students. It really steps through improvisation absolutely from the bare bones, beginner, most basic level. I have students that have been playing piano literally just for a couple of months who are going through the Confident Improviser. They absolutely love it. All right. If you have questions about it, go ahead and chat in and, you know, you can get some responses from other students because I know some of you on the session right now are, are part of the Confident Improviser. So go ahead and, you could be the ones that sell it rather than me selling it. I think it's a fantastic program and it really changes around the way that you look at improvisation, right? And it's really built from step by step, the ground up. So if you've never improvised before, I can all but guarantee you, as long as you're willing to practice, if you do the Confident Improviser, you're going to be able to improvise. So now in the Confident Improviser, we break things down into accompaniment, notes, or what I like to call ingredients, rhythm, and then finally licks and exercises, right? So those are the three things, though: your accompaniment, your ingredients, and then your rhythm, right? So now taking a look, you'll see that this is from Confident Improviser number 11, and then I'm going to show you something from the Confident Improviser number 13. So here you can see that our ingredients that we're using for this particular example, now notice this is the example from Confident Improviser number 11. You'll notice that this is a 1-6-2-5 or a 1-5-7 of 2, 2-5 progression. It's in the key of C. It's not in the key of F that the Days of Wine and Roses is in, right? But we have the idea of like, okay, chords, right? Utilizing our chord tones. So again, if we go back to, well, we could just use this as our example. There's our chords: F major 7, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7 flat 9. So now I could start to utilize. Right? So now there's my F major 7th chord tones, okay? And then E flat 7. Now notice I'm doing them in an inversion here. Remember, when I'm talking chord tones, I'm saying, hey, look, you know where those chord tones are anywhere. So it's like bum, 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 you know, those are all still your E flat 7 chord tones. If you brought them all together, right? Right? Now you see your E flat 7 chord. So they could be spread out in any way. That's why you need to know your chord tones. When I go to A minor, when I go to D7, so here I'm going to utilize that flat 13 in my chord tone, and I'm also going to utilize that flat 9 as well. Okay. Now you'll also notice that I can also use the chord tones from my rootless chord voicing to improvise as well. Now listen what happens when I improvise just utilizing these chord tones. So you get a really good sounding improvisation utilizing just chord tones. So if you have some decent rhythm going on, you're kind of weaving those chord tones around, you can really get a lot of mileage out of those chord tones. In fact, that's a super great way of starting your improvisation, because chord tones are always going to sound good in your improvisation, right? But again, we utilize the Confident Improviser in that structure of learning improvisation, and then we start to apply it to our standards, okay? But we start with those exercises first, and then we can apply it to the standards. The other thing that we could do is, this is from number 13, right? So utilizing our chord scale cells, all right? So here on F major, when we go to E flat, or maybe what I might do is I might throw in sharp 11 in there, okay? When I go to the A minor 7, when I do the D7, I might do that instead with a flat 9 rather than natural 9, okay? So now as I bring in those chord cells, now listen to my improvisation. Now you can start to hear more of that chromaticism start to creep in to your improvisation, right? And then as we move on in the Confident Improviser, and there starts to be more advanced concepts that are presented in the Confident Improviser, those advanced concepts spill over right into Standards by the Dozen. So what you're going to notice is that there's going to be a very deep connection between Confident Improviser and Standards by the Dozen. If you've, again, for years have been like, I just want to learn standards and learn how to make an arrangement and learn how to improvise over it. Well, these two programs, they're going to get you there, right? As long as you're willing to practice, then they'll get you there. How much should you practice? Well, first of all, the old adage goes, practice only on the days that you eat. And then if you can practice at least a half an hour a day, 5 days a week, you're going to see some actual serious progress. So there's going to be many different written improvisation examples that will be available for Jazz Edge members. So if you're a Jazz Edge member, you're going to be able to watch all of Standards by the Dozen. So like you'll get access to all the music, all the resources, be able to watch all the videos. You can join me live. You can catch the replays. You can join in on the Q&A sessions. You get all of the material, all right? So that is available for our full Jazz Edge members. So if you're not a Jazz Edge member, all right, so first of all, let's talk about what you get in a Jazz Edge membership. There's about 800 hours of lessons right now at Jazz Edge, which is just a mind-blowing amount of step-by-step videos. In fact, if you go to a bunch of other sites online, I'm sure you'll see, they might have 200 hours, 300 hours. I mean, I have not seen anyone that has more actual content like we have at Jazz Edge. So you're never going to write into me and say, hey, look, there's nothing to do on the site. No, you're probably going to have the opposite problem of like, there's so much to do. What do I do? And that's where you get the weekly live coaching and office hours, okay? On the site, I give you a bunch of different ideas. Why don't you start with that, do this, okay? In fact, I even have the courses laid out. You can kind of see, start with those courses first. I have some quick links to courses that I like to recommend all of the time to students to start with. You could join me on the live coaching, right? A lot of times students join on live coaching, they just kind of sit back and, they might turn their camera off and just listen or just watch. Other times students are like, hey, look, this is what I'm working on. Can you give me some advice? And then I give them advice on their playing. There's also weekly live Confident Improviser sessions as well. So on Thursday, if you're part of the Confident Improviser program or you have questions about improvisation, you have those sessions available to you on Thursdays as well. Okay. There's also going to be a monthly Standards by the Dozen live session. All right. So for this new course, every month I'm going to have a live session in which if you're a Jazz Edge member, you could join me in this session and be able to, again, share your playing of the standards. I'll give you my feedback. You can ask questions. It's a great time to ask any of those theory questions, and we could talk about stuff that's not in the lessons. There are new lessons that are added weekly. And if you really take a look at the pricing of the site, I mean, the yearly membership is $396 a year. The monthly membership is $49 a month. It is a fantastic deal. Any of you who have taken private lessons, you already know to find a high quality teacher that knows what they're talking about, literally costs hundreds of dollars. And sometimes it might be $100 or even $150 a lesson for you to take a lesson with them. So Jazz Edge with the yearly membership is much less than a cup of coffee. It's $1.08 per day if you get the yearly membership. Now, the thing is, I don't want to see anybody, if it's like, if getting a membership is too much of a financial burden, I have plenty of free stuff, all right? Take a look at all of my YouTube stuff. There's plenty of material there. Take a look at the free trial of the site. You can sign up and you can get free access to the site, and there's a bunch of stuff that you could get in. You could do my 30-day piano playbook, absolutely free. You could download all of that music. That's a great place to get started right there. And that's my gift to all of my students and everybody that wants to learn to play piano, because that's really what I want to do. I want to show you how to do this, right? I don't want to have you beholden to me. Oh, no, you got to stay with Willie in order to get the next new song. No, I want to show you how to do it so then you have the skills to be able to move on and then get to the next, phase in your playing that you want to get to. So if it's too much of a financial burden, don't worry, I got a bunch of free stuff. But if you're really looking to dive in and really looking to learn standards, learn improvisation, I could tell you my system works. It works, it works, it works. Ask students, all right? Join in on office hours and just ask the students that are on there, hey, does this work? And then see what it is that they have to say. The program works. I've seen thousands of students go through the Jazz Edge program, and it's just so amazing to see the progress that they make. And it doesn't take that long either. I mean, really, if you're willing to do some practice, obviously that's the big one, right? You just can't get a membership to the site and it just happens, by osmosis. You actually have to do some stuff. So as long as you're willing to do some practice, I can guarantee you're going to get there. All right, so you can sign up right at jazzedge.com if you're interested in a membership. For those of you that are No Bull Piano members, all right, so if you go to Jazz Edge, you'll see, oh, there's a No Bull Piano membership as well. What's that all about? Well, if you get a No Bull Piano membership, that's about 1/6 of the amount of material on the Jazz Edge site, okay? Still, plenty of material to get started with, plenty of material to last you literally for years, right? And then you can easily upgrade your membership to a full Jazz Edge membership at any time if you want to. And Standards by the Dozen, the first level of this, okay, so the January session, Days of Wine and Roses, that full lesson will be available to all of my No Bull Piano students to give you guys an opportunity to kind of see what it's all about. I also want to remind you that there is a 14-day trial as well at Jazz Edge. So you can go to jazzedge.com, sign up for the 14-day trial, and then I'm going to show you right now what that looks like here. So if you just go right over to Jazz Edge, go right on down here, click on the annual billing or monthly billing. Okay, you can see it's $396 a year. Click on join and see what it says here. It's a free 14-day trial. So what's going to happen is 14 days free, and then it starts to bill. Sometimes students kind of miss this in the sign up. During your 14-day trial, you cannot download the sheet music, right? I think it's pretty obvious why, but it just prevents, the people who are just looking to like download all my stuff for free from getting on, all right? So, but you can watch all of the videos. So for 14 days, you can watch all the content on the site as much as you want. And then after the 14 days, then you would have access to the sheet music. All right, so questions. Ask your question via chat, all right? The replay will be emailed out later on today, okay? So if you want to get a replay of what I talked about here, along with the link to the resources, that will get emailed out later on today. So feel free to, look for that. It will get sent to your email box as long as you registered for the webinar. All right, so now I know that there are a bunch of questions already. Let me move over to YouTube real quick. Jim had a question. When did this start? The Confident Improviser, what is it? Okay, so when did this start? First of all, Standards by the Dozen is brand new. It's starting literally now. So I'm going to explain, after I answer the questions. Let me do that right now before I answer questions so you guys kind of know what are the next steps. Next week, okay, so starting next week, on Jazz Edge, if you're a Jazz Edge member or No Bull Piano member, you're going to see a new course that says Standards by the Dozen. In that course, you're going to be able to get in and you're going to be able to download all of the resources for that lesson. A week later, I'm going to do the live video, okay? So a week after I release all the material on the site, all of the sheet music, the backing tracks, I'm going to do a live lesson just like this. Right? I'm going to teach the lesson, and then once I'm done teaching the lesson, which is probably going to take, somewhere about 45 minutes to an hour, I will then say, okay, does anybody have any questions, right? And then at that point, you can ask me any questions of what you've been working on for the week, because you will have had the material for a week. So you might have some questions that, you want to ask. You'll also be able to ask questions on, when I teach it live. Okay, well, why did you do it like that? Or I don't understand that. So that's the first opportunity that you'll have to be able to ask questions. And then usually about a week after that, maybe 2 weeks, January is going to be a little bit more compressed because we're already at January 15th. We're already halfway in the month, so we don't have as much time. So it'll probably end up being more compressed. But moving on, February, March, April, May. And by the way, this course is going to go on. It says standards by the dozen. It's going to be 12 months of standards, and then we might move on after that and continue it, right? But at least it's going to be at least a full year course. So all of 2021, there's going to be a new standard released every month. All right, so anyway, a week after I do the live session typically, or maybe 2 weeks, like I said, that's still up in the air, you'll be able to get on right from the live training. You'll see standards by the dozen, click on that, and then you'll be able to join me in a live session. And then that's where now you will have had a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks to practice the song. Maybe you make your own video, you share the video and say, okay, oh, look, here's John playing Days of Wine and Roses. Let's take a look at it. And then I can give you my feedback on your playing. And also that's the second opportunity for you to be able to answer, to be able to ask your questions, right? And we're just going to continue like that, right? So in February, there's going to be a new standard. The music resources are all going to get released at the beginning part of February. You're going to have a week to work on it. Then I'm going to teach the live training. You'll be able to ask questions at the end of the live training if you have questions. If not, then I'll say, okay, see you later, everybody. And then a week or so after that, I'm going to do a follow-up live session in which you can then get feedback on your playing or ask other questions. And now, as a Jazz Edge member, remember, you also get weekly coaching every Tuesday. You also get office hours, right? There's also the Confident Improviser. I don't mind if you ask questions about standards by the dozen in any of those sessions, right? So those would be other sessions and other opportunities for you to be able to ask me questions. I mean, realistically, what you get at Jazz is you get a live teacher. I mean, I am on live a lot. Students can attest to that. And in fact, sometimes it's like so much that students are like, oh, do I have to attend every one of these? No, you don't have to attend every session. You attend the ones that you can attend. And then, don't worry, everything is also recorded as well. Jim said, so you're using seventh chords in the left hand. How low on the keyboard can this be used? Well, that gets into your lower interval limits. And this is where, just use your ears. I mean, you could hear that's way too low. That's too low, right? But that's okay. That sounds even better, right? So those lower interval limits, you're going to want to utilize your ears and really listen for that doesn't sound good. Yeah, that sounds fine. Okay. But now, it's a little low. We can maybe get away with that. C7 is probably the lowest one there, right? And Jim, yeah, I've been teaching myself for 11 years now. So, well, Jim, come on to the site, and then, I could be teaching you for the next 11 years. You're asking, where am I gigging? Right now, not a lot of gigging going on, to be honest with you, due to COVID. So right now, it's a lot of practicing and writing new tunes, and I'm thinking about doing another album, so I'm kind of working on that material right now. All right, so I have a bunch of questions here on Zoom, so let me go in here and answer these as well. I want to apologize if I mispronounce your name. I apologize in advance. Gilad asks, any tips on how to memorize standards? Even after analyzing them and playing them again and again, I can't leave my real book. All right, so sometimes the problem that you have in memorizing a standard is not that you don't know the standard itself, is that you might be trying to memorize too much. So in memorization, it's really about memorizing just a little bit, just enough, all that you need to be able to then create your arrangement on the fly, right? So in other words, you're not going to be memorizing, what the chord voicings are or anything like that. So if we take a look at, even something like this here, Days of Wine and Roses. All right, so the first thing to really note on Days of Wine and Roses is this idea of going from the major chord down to the flat seventh, okay? And then this comes up to the 3 chord, and it does like a 2-5 going to the 2 chord. That's what's happening there. And a lot of times that right there too could be enough. So one thing to try is see if you memorize and really kind of get down even just the first part of a song, right? And really kind of know that. Does that help you give enough of a springboard so that you can kind of memorize the rest of it? Because sometimes, remember, when it comes to memorization, there are many different facets to memorization. We don't just sit with the music and just stare at it, and then it's like, okay, now I got it, all right? I mean, obviously, sure, I guess that's one way in which you can memorize it. But typically, when it comes to memorization of standards, it's a multi-prong approach, all right? Some of it is take the standard along with you, print it off, and take it with you and just kind of have a sheet and be looking at it away from the piano. Super important skill. I just posted a TED Talk on that on the Facebook group, right? So you can check that out. But doing your practice away from the piano, super, super important and helpful. The other thing is, obviously, the kinesthetic. We remember what's going on here, like by playing the melody over and over again. The next thing is we start to analyze it, right? The next thing is, if we could really just have like those main sections of the song together, like, all right, I know in the beginning it goes from the major seventh down to the flat seven, all right? So like, and then it goes to a 2-5 of the 2 chord, right? And then here, this does another 2-5, right? Okay, but then it resolves down to G minor. A little bit odd there, right? Okay, so by memorizing those pockets of what's going on, it makes it a lot easier to then get a fuller picture of the song. And then I'm going to be talking about this in Standards by the Dozen as well. I'm going to give you some of the analysis and just kind of give you some ideas of, all right, look, this is how I look at the tune, and this is how I would memorize the song, right? Jeff asks, hey, Willie, registered for this course but never received the email. Another student on Facebook kindly gave me the link for this. I posted a few times regarding this. All right, I'm not sure where you posted it. Email did go out today. And in fact, the email went out to everyone, so be sure to check your spam box. Unfortunately, once the email leaves from my CRM program, I have no control as to whether or not you get it. I can tell you that the email was definitely sent out. But anyway, I'm glad that you're here. Marlene, the chords are hard to read. Can you make them clear? Well, you can download all of the resources. Again, go to jazzedge.com/live. You can go ahead and download that. Marlene, I think that you're a member of the site, so you don't have to worry about it. You can just go right into the course once it's released, and you'll be able to print it all off. Remember, when we're doing a live thing like this and it's on the screen, sure, it might be kind of difficult to be able to read. Also remember this too, when I do these live things and it's streaming out live, sometimes the quality is not super great because, well, it's the internet, all right? But I am also recording high def resolution video of all of this, and that's what gets posted onto the site for members, all right? You also get that high definition resolution in the replay as well. So once you have that in hand, it'll probably be much easier for you to be able to read it. William, I've downloaded the resources on your site, but will I be able to get a complete lead sheet for this tune? Yes, as a member, you absolutely will be able to. If you're not a member, then you can go ahead and purchase the real book. I do a lot of stuff for free. And I don't apologize that I don't give away everything for free, right? I've worked very hard, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting that, but to anyone who might be watching this, be like, oh, let's just give away all this stuff for free. Well, you know what? I wish that I could, but that's just kind of like, I should be compensated for all of the training that I've done over the years. You wouldn't go to a lawyer or a doctor and say, why don't you just treat me for free or work for free, all right? It's the same thing, and that's one of the things I will tell you that is near and dear to my heart, that artists should be paid for their work, right? So, too often, I've gone out, I've done gigs, you do a 3-4 hour gig and then it's like done. You're like, okay, well, we're going to see you later. Oh, can you just keep playing? Oh, you love to do this. Well, imagine like your boss said to you at work, hey, can you stay an extra hour, but you're not going to be paid for it, right? Most people are going to say no to that. So I can tell you this, the value that you get at the site is phenomenal. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're looking to learn, it's a phenomenal value, right? And if $49 a month or $396 a year is like out of your budget, I completely get it. That's why I created No Bowl Piano. You can get in No Bowl Piano. I believe the pricing is $24 a month or $179 a year, right? So you could get in and you can, start with the No Bowl Piano program. If all of that is like, hey, look, I don't want to pay anything, feel free to check me out on YouTube, check me out on Facebook. I got plenty of free stuff. Sign up for a free membership at Jazz Edge. There's plenty of stuff that you can take a look at. Do the 30-day piano playbook on me, absolutely free. Download all of the sheet music. I think you'll love that course. Let's see, Marlene, the chat people I shared could print off the 2-page. Okay. What note is the G considered in F? Ninth. Yes. So in an F major 7th chord, a rootless chord voicing, the G is considered a 9th. All right. We don't call it a 2. We call it a 9. Okay. Because it is not replacing the 3rd. It is adding on. It is a tension. Okay. All right, Lucas. Hey, Willie, is it better to master all steps in one standard or study each step across multiple standards? That's going to depend on your skill level. So I will explain this in the course as we do it, but let's say that you're kind of brand new to the piano, right? And then doing rootless chord voicings and the bass line, it's like, whoa, that's a little bit advanced for me. All right, then you start with the lead sheet lesson, right, or chapter, and then you do the shells arrangement chapter, and you do that. You just sit right there with that, and then maybe you do the improvisation as well, right? So the course is designed to allow players of all levels to be able to start in the course and then be able to progress through as much as they can do in the course, right? So you don't have to feel as though you have to do every single chapter. This is exactly the same thing that I'm doing in the Confident Improviser. If you're part of the Confident Improviser or you've seen that, you'll notice that what I do is I have a Confident Improviser lesson, and the lesson is short. It's like 20 minutes or so. It gets right to the point. We get right into it. We learn it. You know, no BS going on there. It's just like, here it is. Here's the material. Learn it. Let's practice it. Go ahead and do it. Then I do an inspiration lesson that I have said many times in the Confident Improviser that you do not have to do the inspiration lesson, right? So, you know, that's more for like those students that want a little bit of extra work, or, you know, the go-getter students, or they're like the more advanced students that want some more advanced techniques. So some students decide to do the inspiration, some students decide not to. Perfectly fine. Same rules apply for standards by the dozen. You know, do the lead sheet and then get down the shells. If you do that, then you have a basic arrangement of the standard, and then you can also take a look at the improvisation section. The other sections, the rootless chords, the bass line, the two-handed chord voicings, those are obviously more intermediate to advanced level topics. So if you're not there yet, you can just kind of save them, all right? So then my suggestion would be for beginners, go through just those first, you know, the lead sheet and the shells chapter for the first couple of standards. And then once you kind of get your feet wet and you're practicing more, you're learning more, then it's like, yeah, you know what? I think I want to try those rootless chord voicings now. Okay, now you can go back and you pick whichever standard you want to do it on, all right? If you want to go back to the beginning and do Days of Wine and Roses with the rootless chord voicings, have at it. If you want to do whatever the newest standard is and say, hey, let me do rootless chord voicings here, then sure, that's fine as well. Not all of the standards are going to have as many chords as Days of Wine and Roses. Not all of them are going to have as few chords as Days of Wine and Roses, right? So I'm going to pick different standards to really allow you the opportunity to maybe dip a toe in rootless chord voicings on a standard that might be a little bit easier, right? Lucas. No, I just answered Lucas. Rick, okay. Joe, does the bass line have to have an approach note to the next chord, or could you just play the chord notes in each measure? No, you can do the chord tone. So that's exactly what I did here, right? So root 5, root 5th, right? So there's no approach there. So like everything else, there are different options available to you in the bass line. So here, this has the root 5 root approach. I'm sorry, root 5 root 5 root 5. Here is root 5 root 5. Here is root 5 root approach, and here is chromatic walk up, right? And then we're going to end up talking about all of those in the course, okay? But again, remember, I have so many lessons on the site that I know you already know, Joe, but I'm saying this for everyone's benefit. I have so many lessons on the site that, you know, I'm not going to dive into like, okay, so this is, you know, again, this course is designed to try and do as little talking as I can to get the point across so that you just actually sit down and learn it, right? And then those follow-up sessions, those will be perfect sessions in which it's like, okay, well, you kind of breezed through that a little bit quick for me. Can you point me to a lesson that explains a little bit more, or can you explain it in the Q&A session? And then that's where then I'll explain it there, right? But I don't want these lessons to like be like a 3-hour lesson every month that you have to fish through. I want to make it so that it's to the point that you can get the material quickly so that you can actually sit and do what we love to do, which is play, right? So anyway, thanks, Joe, for the question. And I just want to quickly remind you, like anytime I'm answering a question, like when I answer your question, I'm answering it thinking that everybody is asking that question. So if I say like, well, there's many lessons on the site, and Joe might be thinking, well, wait a second, I already know that. I'm a member of the site. Understand that I'm saying that for everybody's benefit. So I try and pull back on the question. So I say that I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. Like, what, doesn't he know that I'm a member? Or like, why is he telling me this? I'm not a beginner. I'm saying this for everybody's benefit. All right, so Joanne, to voice comping, what in the right hand? Can you repeat the word? All right, so you could use the bell tones, right? So that's like the octave and maybe the octave with a note in between. You could also use chordals, Q-U-A-R-T-E-L. Yeah, chordal. No, A-L. So chordals, all right? So, and basically chordals are this. Stacked fourths is what's going on. It's an interval of a fourth, another interval of a fourth. You could keep going, fourth, right? Or, whatever, on the F, okay? So stacked intervals of a fourth, that's what we call our chordals. Ismail, when should I start to try these techniques? Once I reach a comfortable level of my scales and chord voicings? No, you could actually start right away. Let's say you're brand new. You're not on the site. You're not part of Jazz Edge. And you're just getting started on Jazz Edge. Well, the first thing I would suggest you do is go through the piano essentials, okay? I'm going to tell this to everybody. I've said it time and time again. Some students agree with me and they do it and they see success. Other students try and say, no, I already know that, and then unfortunately they don't find success because they don't understand just how important it is to know your major scales. You have to know your major scales, and that's not just for technique. It's because all of your theory, most of it, like 99% of your theory, all comes back to a major scale. When I say, hey, look, it's 1, 3, 5, 7 of the major scale for a major seventh chord, well, if you don't know what 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the major scale is, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to form that chord, right? Or if I say it's the ninth, well, you got to know that 9 means 2. Well, 2 of what? Of the scale. If I say it's the 13th, well, 13 means 6. Of what? Of the scale. If you don't know that note is the 6th note of the F major scale, then you're going to be dead in the water. So you really have to make sure that you learn, master those major scales. The beauty is you got piano essentials right there. And with piano essentials, it steps right through. And I'll tell you, like if I were brand new starting on the site and I wanted to learn jazz standards, there are 3 courses that are just slam dunk for you. You do piano essentials, you do the confident improviser, you do standards by the dozen. There you go. That's your practice right there. If you do those 3 courses and you stay focused on those 3 courses, right? And then that's all that you do, by the end of the year, you're going to have 12 standards under your belt, be able to play arrangements of those. You're going to understand rootless chord voicings. You're going to understand basslines. You're going to learn how to comp with 2 hands. You're going to know improvisation. You're going to know how to play all 12 major scales. You should also know all of your 7th chords as well. That's a 1-year, succession here. 1 year through that program. If you go and you do piano essentials every month, so take the key of C. There's 12 keys of music, 12 months. Start with the key of C. So here we are, January. All right, I'm going to do piano essentials in the key of C. Let me watch those videos, download that music, do those lessons. All right, there I go. Usually I say do that for about 1/3 of your practice session. The other 1/3 of your practice session, do the confident improviser. Where today, number 13 was released, okay? Those are released every week, Okay. Now, if you can't keep up to every week, don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. You don't have to keep up every week. And I have students that are phenomenal players that they're not on week 13. They're still on week 7 or week 8. Absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that. You go at your own pace. But the point is, now you have that. Now you have that focus. And now Standards by the Dozen coming out next week. Well, now you do that. So now for January, you get down to Days of Wine and Roses, you learn some bassline stuff, you learn shells, you learn maybe rootless chord voicings, maybe the bassline, it depends, right? But you start to learn improvisation, you do your scales. I mean, it really is like, just a fantastic, those 3 courses right there. That's it. That's what you need. All right. And if I were starting out, I would do those 3 courses. And by the end of the year, I'd be killing it. I'd be crushing it, because those 3 courses are going to, as long as you practice again, right? I'm going to make sure I say that. As long as you practice, those 3 courses right there you're going to be killing it at the end of the year. All right. Tom, speaking of TCI, can you please look at the resources for exercise 13? The links in the sheet music and call and response do not work. Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. I will take a look at that after we're done with the session here. Thanks for letting me know. Sam, when will the next Standards by the Dozen session be? Like I said, next week, I'm going to release the sheet music on the site. If you're a member of Jazz Edge, you'll get an email about that. I'll kind of detail out again what's going on. I'm probably going to also do a kind of like a little summary video, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour to go up there. And that's going to be kind of like the prep video. And I will probably add that prep video at the beginning of each one of those lessons. So in the course, the first lesson is going to be the Days of Wine and Roses. When you click on that lesson, you're going to see like this chapter is going to say how to prepare, something like that. And you're going to see the resources. So in that how to prepare, I'll say, okay, once again, download the resources. And then once you have the resources, make sure you do this, okay? So that how to prepare lesson will kind of just help you kind of, know what you have to do for that week. The following week, I'm going to do the lesson live, right? You'll be able to ask me questions if you're a member of the site. And then a week later or 2 weeks, it's going to depend on the month, I'm going to do the follow-up Q&A session in which you can actually share your playing. You could play live. You could send in a YouTube or a Vimeo link, and then you can ask me questions, all right? Let's see. Sam asks, should I practice the Days of Wine and Roses on Advanced Jazz Standards this month to participate? Oh, yeah, okay. So the Days of Wine and Roses that's already on the site is kind of like an arrangement lesson. You could take a look at that if you want to, but honestly, there's really not much that you have to do to prepare. The biggest thing, if you wanted to get a head start going through the melody, right? And one of the best things you could do is go through the melody and just play the root of the chord in the left hand. Oh, I said that it went B flat minor to E flat, then G minor. No, I'm sorry. It goes down to A minor. It's a half step resolution. I made a mistake there, so I apologize. But anyway, you could do that. Just get the lead sheet or, download that lesson as a member, all right? And then just do the root in the left hand and get the melody in the right hand, all right? That will be a great way of getting started, just to kind of dip a toe before we get started. Leslie, the idea is memorize all the rootless voicings, or rather get so familiar with them that you know them cold. Well, again, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? So, like, we can't look at it and just simply say, all right, if I just play them, like, I'll get them down, because that's not really how we learn. There has to be some understanding of what you're playing. Otherwise, we're just literally typing at the piano, in a way. We're just playing notes and not knowing what we're playing. That is part of it, though, okay? I'm not going to say that it's not part of it. So that kinesthetic learning of, like, knowing what that shape is, yeah. So, like, when I go to an F major 7th, rootless chord voicing, I know that shape, but I also know what makes up this chord, right? So that if I had, like, to do the shape like something like this and be like, oh, yeah, that's the shape, and be like, yeah, that doesn't sound right. Oh, I could look at it like, well, of course it's not right, Willie. You're playing a sharp 11 in there rather than 9 and 3. So, so again, understanding what you're playing, doing the kinesthetic stuff, listening, the call and response, playing with the band, the lessons, the live Q&A, all of that together, that's what really starts to establish that knowledge and really locks it in for you so that you can master it, right? But I've heard students say like, oh, my old teacher said you got to go through and learn all major seventh, minor seventh, and dominant seventh rootless chord voicings around the circle of fifths and all 12 keys before you could start to apply them to standards. Really? I mean, first of all, one thing to understand is like, and this is no fault of any teacher. I never want to throw any teacher under the bus. I'll tell you, I disagree with the educational approach that I see of some online teachers. I think one thing that I see a lot of is this oversimplification of piano that somehow in like, I'm on this guy's email list, this guy learned piano in 19 days. Yeah, okay. All right, sure. And I could tell you that I taught my daughter piano in 3 hours, okay? Because sure, I did. She could sit down and play something at the piano. But is that learning to play the piano, or is that learning to play something at the piano? Because learning to do something at the piano is a lot different than actually learning the piano. If I sit down with a friend of mine on a Saturday and he shows me, or she shows me, how to perform a brake job on my car, does that mean I'm a mechanic now? Well, of course not, all right? I know how to do that one thing, but it doesn't mean that I'm a mechanic and can like drop the engine and, and rebuild an engine, right? So, I hate that oversimplification of piano, and I hate also the teachers that say, well, you got to do this in all 12 keys before you can utilize it. I don't like that approach because number one, it takes an enormous amount of discipline to say, okay, I'm going to go through all 12 keys. Like I'm going to learn 148 different chords before I start to apply them to a song. And then the other problem is like, how do I know when I know them well enough to apply them to a song? Yeah, it's a bad approach, right? What I have found to be a much better approach is take knowledge, learn a little bit of knowledge, and apply it as soon as you can. The sooner you can apply knowledge to some real world stuff, right, to a real song, the easier and faster it's going to be for you to be able to lock that information in. That's exactly what we're going to be doing in Standards by the Dozen, right? So you're going to be working on your shells. You're going to be working on your rootless chord voicings, your bass line, your two-hand accompany, your improvisation. And by doing it in relation and in conjunction with an actual standard, that's what's going to help you to start to lock it in, right? Now, on every standard, you might not learn the rootless chord voicings on every single standard. You might only do it on 3, 4, 5 of them. That's okay. But the thing is that the more that you apply this knowledge in a real world type of situation, you're going to find that, bam, that's the stuff that locks it in, right? And again, you can ask my students, like with Confident Improviser, they're doing these exercises. I had a student the other day tell me that how like that Confident Improviser program has helped them to organize their practice and really make strides in their piano playing. Right? So it's about that application, right? Elaine, is the term anticipation to create rhythm interest the same as the term back phrasing? I haven't heard the term back phrasing before, to be honest with you, but everybody uses different terms and whatnot. And anticipation is basically like, well, let's take this right here. This A is coming in on beat 1. So to anticipate it means that I'm going to play the A just before the beginning of the beat, all right? So then I might do. So I see how I can anticipate that. And in that anticipation, what it does is it does that, it's almost like, imagine that somebody's like kind of interrupting, right? And as much as that is annoying, what it does though is it kind of catches your attention because the natural phrasing that you're expecting that's going to happen now gets rushed, right? It's like now in there a little bit sooner, right? And that anticipation also creates that forward motion in jazz, right? It's like kind of like that cool forward motion because we're anticipating those chords before we get to it, before the resolution, and that helps to kind of move it forward, and it's what gives jazz and swing rhythm that like kind of like forward movement and that exciting motion, right? So that's what an anticipation is. Russ, will there be pre-prepared videos on site? Or is the live session the only teaching, i.e. Reference to resources already made available? All right, so basically there's no difference between the live teaching and the prepared video, all right? So what I'm doing is I could easily do the teaching and then upload it to the site and be like, there you go. What I'm going to do instead, though, is I'm going to do the teaching, right? It will be recorded and then posted up onto the site, but then I'm doing it live so that then that's your first opportunity to be able to ask questions. So rather than it just being like, okay, so Days of Wine and Roses, okay, all right, there we go. All right, so thank you, everybody, and I'll see you, in the live training, right? No, it's, okay, okay, so we're done with the lesson. All right, thank you for joining me. Who has questions? Right? So all of that is going to be recorded. So the difference between a pre-recorded video and a live video, the only difference is that I'm going to be, look at it this way. The pre-recorded video I might do, and don't get attached to any day or time that I'm saying right now, because I don't know what day and time I'm going to be doing this live, right? So don't get attached to a time. This is just an example. But let's say that on a Tuesday, I'm going to I would have recorded the video for Standards by the Dozen. The only difference is rather than recording it on Tuesday at, let's just say noon, for example, rather than recording it Tuesday at noon, you'd be, okay, stopping recording. Okay, now let me go ahead and upload and all that. Rather than doing that, I'm going to be recording it live on Tuesday so that then you could join in, right? Now, I'm not going to be answering any questions while I'm teaching it live, okay? Because I want the flow to be, here's the teaching live. So some students are just not going to join in. Some students will be like, yeah, I don't want to watch them teach it live, all right? I'll catch the recording. Hey, no problem, all right? Nothing wrong with that. Some students are going to want to see me teach it live, right? And they're going to want to see, like, well, how does he do this live, And they'll be a little bit interested, okay? Some students will say, all right, you know what? I'm going to skip out on the first half hour of that, and I'm going to come in like, a half hour later after he's already been doing some teaching, just so I could get more of the tail end and then be able to ask my question. That's absolutely fine as well. Some students will get in, they'll stay for the first 10 minutes and they'll be like, okay, I got to go, and they'll leave. That's fine as well. So it's really, you have whatever works for you and for your schedule, you can, do whatever works well for you. Millie Wyatt, this has to be Virgil. Is there a forum or central location to access all the Jazz Edge iReal charts? Yeah, they're all in the resources of each of the lessons. So go to the individual lesson, you'll see an iReal Pro link, click on that, and then you can import it right into iReal Pro. Pair, can a rootless chord be only the third and the seventh, or the seventh and the third? Those would be just your guide tones, all right? So it still is a rootless chord, so I could play. Right, so that would be fine. I could do that as well, just doing my guide tones. The reason we do the 4-note rootless chords, it just kind of fills out the harmony a little bit more. Gail, will we get a lead sheet for the full song? Yes. Can we download the iReal Pro backing track now? No, it is not ready, like I said. And again, all of the resources are going to be available to members, okay? So if you're not a member of the site, I'm super grateful that you check out my stuff. Thank you very much for taking a look at it. You can sign up for a membership and then you'll be able to get access to all of it. Or if you just want to keep taking a look at my free stuff, take a look at my YouTube channel and all of that. I got plenty of free stuff on there. So next week, okay, starting next week, the Standards by the Dozen course will be put on the site, all right? You'll see the course there, and then that's when you'll be able to get in and you'll be able to download the resources. I do not know if it's going to be up there Monday morning or Monday afternoon. It will be up there at some point on Monday, okay? Like I said, all Jazz Edge members will get an email as soon as it is ready, and then you can get in there, you can download all the resources, and like I said, there'll be like a little preparatory video that you can watch as well, which kind of explains, again, in summary, how the course works. Deborah Ann, are you going to sell this course separately? No, I have no intention at this time selling this course separately. It's all part of a Jazz Edge membership. Stephen, please repeat how to download current material. It's different for the material on Lesson of Days in Wine and Roses. All right, so if you go to jazzedge.com/live, this is where you can get the material from today's webinar. As far as the actual course, like I said, next week it will be on the site. You will get an email as a member, and then that's the time when you can go on and download all the material. Look at this as just like kind of like a preparatory, just kind of letting everyone know this is what's coming up, and then also giving non-members an opportunity to kind of meet me, see how I teach, see the material, and then make a decision whether or not they want to join up as a member. Mary, as a Jazz Edge member, can I start Standards by the Dozen anytime? Yes. Well, of course, once it goes up there, right? So it's not up there yet. So starting next week, just because it's up there next week doesn't mean that you have to start it right then and there. If you want to wait until, let's say, April, right? You got plenty of stuff that you're working on right now. You want to wait till April and you want to start? Absolutely, right? As a member, you get free flow that you can move in between the lessons at any time. One thing that I do not do, I tried it for that much time on the site, and then I quickly took it off because I just don't like that approach. I hate that drip thing, in which is like, oh, okay, well, you can't watch it until the next week, and you can't watch this until the next week. Like if you take a look at the Confident Improviser, there are 13 sessions up there right now. If you sign up today for a membership, well, guess what? You get access to all 13. It's not like you got to wait 13 weeks before you can get access to that material. I feel that, one part of that, giving all that material right away, is a potential curriculum and pedagogy challenge for a student because, whoa, I got access to too much right away. But I feel like I'd rather do that and help a student during coaching, during the live sessions, help a student that way to be able to organize their practice. Plus, there's also on the dashboard stuff on like start here, there's courses, quick links, all right? So there's plenty of different ways in which you can see like, all right, here's my structure. But I like the idea of just presenting everything and being able to like let you see everything. Now, the Standards by the Dozen, understand, I don't have all 12 months all pre-recorded. This is going to be an ongoing course, right? So next week, Days of Wine and Roses is going to get released, and then the following week I'm going to do the live video, and then we're going to do a Q&A session. In February, there's going to be a new standard released. What that standard is, I don't know yet. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to send out a poll and then allow students to decide which standard they would like to see on the site next. All right. Jerry, any tips on not losing your way and adding or skipping a beat as you try to embellish a melody and play the rootless chords? Well, first of all, if you find that you are losing your way, take off the embellishment. Go back to just, the simple, melody as is. I would say the first thing to do is just see if you can play your rootless chords. Just like straight on, right on the beat, along with the simplified melody. Then from there, start to add in a little bit of rhythm, maybe in the right-hand melody, okay? So. That's a bad example. Let me do that again. All right, so left hand, I kept right on the beat. Right hand, I added a little bit of, embellishment to the rhythm, right? And then from there, then you can start to embellish the left hand as well as the right hand. Right, so then you can start to embellish from there. But now if you find at any one of those steps, whoa, I'm losing my place, then that lets you know you need to work on that step some more. The problem usually is that students will dive in and it's like, okay, let me do rootless chords, let me do my melody, let me do fills, let me do comping rhythms. And now they're piling on all of this new stuff that they really didn't get good at first. This is why we start with the shells. I can't tell you how many students are like, yeah, I got shells. I know how to do that. All right, go ahead and play it with shells. Yeah, I wouldn't say that you got it down there. All right, so you got to make sure you get that down first before you dive into rootless chord voicings. All right, because if you can't do the shells, then the rootless chord voicings are going to be, that's a bridge too far. It's going to be too much for you to be able to try and get that down. Right. Donna, will we be doing an entire song for the lessons or just several measures as an example? No. You learn the whole song. Today, I'm giving you just a few measures because we had a lot to go through. So I wanted to have time to be able to explain all of that. And then also, quite frankly, I'm not going to teach the entire lesson for free. But in the course, you get it all. Like you're going to see the shells version start to finish. You're going to see the bassline version start to finish. You're going to see like all of that start to finish. You're going to get all of that. Okay. Joseph, should we work out the melody and fingering first before adding in the shells? Absolutely. All right. And that's why we start with the lead sheet first. And I'm going to help you. I'll kind of give you some tips in there as far as the fingering and stuff. But the first chapter is going to be the lead sheet. And with the lead sheet, we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff, checking the key signature, seeing if there's any gutches in the melody, seeing if there's any fingering issues, talking about a little bit of rhythmic embellishment, that kind of stuff, right? And then how we could play that along with the backing track, okay? So we start there first, then we move on to shells. Anonymous attendee, I'm classically trained and know my scales, chords, etc. Any tips on where to start? I think I answered that, but what I would do is I would get into the site. I would do piano essentials first. For you, if you're already at grade 8, you should be able to blast through all 12 major scales, no problem. 2 hands, 2 octaves, contrary motion. But there's other stuff in piano essentials, like do you know all your 7th chords? Do you know your tensions? Do you know your 1, 4, 5 progressions? Do you, so I would take a look at all of that other stuff. Then I would do the confident improviser. If you're classically trained, you might not have any improvisation skills under your belt. There you go. Confident improviser gives you all of that. And then I would do standards by the dozen. So those 3 courses right there, that's the perfect trinity of courses right there. Richard, will you help us with chicory fingerings? Yeah, I will. Like I said, I will kind of give some fingering suggestions in that lead sheet lesson. And of course, that's always something too in the Q&A session after I record the lesson or in that follow-up session. You're always more than welcome to ask me those questions. You could also join in on coaching every Tuesday, join in on office hours every Wednesday, right? Those would also be great times to ask me questions like that. Jason, how do you get access to the accompanying tracks? That's all part of being a member, all right? So if you're a member of Jazz Edge, then once you log into the site, I will show you just real quick. I'll log into the site right now and just kind of show you what all of that looks like. So while I'm doing that, let me see if there's other questions here. All righty. Okay, so if I'm in the site right now and I just go to, let me just take my Confident Improviser course. I'll go there right now real quick. And when I get into the Confident Improviser, let's do Confident Improviser exercise number 1. And you see, it's all right here. Okay, so if I click on sheet music, there I go. I got my sheet music right there. All right, so all of my stuff, my backing track, my iReal Pro track, there it is, right there. And then all I need to do is, whoops, sorry about that. All I need to do is simply click on this, and it will open up iReal Pro, and I'll bring it right into iReal Pro. All right. So all of that material is available right in the members area. Okay. Sam, where's the iReal Pro link for Days and Wine and Roses arrangement? There is not one. All right. So the old Days and Wine and Roses lesson, there was no iReal Pro track for that. You can get onto the iReal Pro forums and then get the Jazz 1300. It's in there. I don't know if Paul did that lesson. I don't know if those changes that he used are exactly what's in the iReal Pro. I will tell you, for standards by the dozen, all of those iReal Pro tracks are going to match chord for chord with the arrangements. All right. So this new course, standards by the dozen, all of that material will be available next week. Right. Rick, will the entire lead sheet and steps be included or only? Okay, I already answered that. Rick, will the lead sheet be the same as those in real books? Yeah, for the most part. All right. So basically what I do is I take the real book and then maybe I might change here or there. But yes, for the most part, the chords in the real book are going to match those that you're going to find in Standards by the Dozen. Lucas, will you cover arranging with two hands, i.e. root 7 in the left hand, other notes in the right hand, like other courses? No, because just like you said, there are other courses in which I've already done that. So take a look at my step-by-step standards. That course goes through all of that. Now, of course, you could take those same ideas and now start to apply them to these Standards by the Dozen. But the idea for Standards by the Dozen is that you're going to end up learning how to create that simple arrangement, but then the rootless chords, the bass line, the two-handed comping, okay? The more ballad cocktail piano stuff, I've already covered that in numerous lessons on the site. Standards, step-by-step standards is the place to go for that. Piano Reg, this is not a question. Let me and other students of yours testify on how awesome you are and how much time you give us during the week. You can only do so much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. Donna, sounds great. Hopefully I'll make some progress this time. Well, as long as you practice, you will make progress. And again, if you have questions, join me during the live Q&A sessions. I will tell you this as well. This is kind of like it's kind of hush-hush on the site. You can also take a private lesson with me as well, all right? So you can, it is an added cost, all right? It is not part of the membership, but if you found that you got stuck, if you just go up to the menu area where it says My Jazz Edge, there's a section there that says private lessons, book a private lesson, click there, and you can go ahead and take a private lesson with me. Mark, if you want to follow the Suggested Piano Essentials, if I want to follow the Suggested Piano Essentials, Confident Improviser, and Standards by the Dozen, then should I start them all concurrently or do Piano Essentials first, then Confident Improviser, then Standards by the Dozen? You know, you can start them all concurrently. So if you're not already kind of down a rabbit hole and practicing something specific, sure, you can go ahead and start each one of those courses. Piano Essentials, you could start with the key of C, or since this is where you could kind of tweak it a little bit. Since Days of Wine and Roses in the key of F, right? Then rather than starting in the key of C Piano Essentials, you could go to the key of F Piano Essentials. Just note, though, there is a lesson called Piano Essentials Tips, which would be good to take a look at. And also it would be probably a good idea to take a look at least at the key of C, because that was the first key that I started with. That was the longest lesson, and I really laid it out slowly, step by step. As soon as we got to the key of F, that was one of the later ones. So I just kind of like blasted through that a lot more, because at that point, if you followed the chorus, you should have known, you know, what I was talking about. So I didn't want to like just bonk you over the head with the same stuff over and over. But you should be able to start with the key of F, know what you're doing, and be all good with that. All right, let me just check real quick here, see if there's any other questions on So Jenny asked, is this live now? All right, well, here. What is the date and time?
It's Friday, January 15th, 2021.
Friday, January 15th, 2021. All right. So, yep, we are live right now. I know that, you know, especially with like some of this marketing stuff, it's like, oh, is this really live? I don't do any of that stuff. That stuff like leaves a poor taste in my mouth. Hey guys, here I am live right now, and I'm sitting on a beach someplace. That's not what I do in my students, all right? And my students can attest that, you know, like they already have, that I give a lot to my students. I want to see you succeed. So this is not just like some, you know, money-making mill in which is like, oh, okay, you know, just put out a video and then, you know, get a bunch of people in and then just leave them high and dry. No, when I'm live, all right? I'm here right now. In fact, unfortunately, I'm going to have to let all of you go in like 2 seconds because I have to literally go get my children who are live and are going to be waiting for me. Yeah, so I think I got all of the... Oh, Kevin, should we learn to think in all 15 keys of music or just focus on learning 12? I mean, do we need to learn C flat, C sharp, and both F? Oh yeah. Like, you know, quite honestly, I wouldn't worry about getting into like, you know, C flat, C sharp. You know, like C flat, key of B. right? C sharp, I like to think it D flat. I find it a little bit easier than thinking of it as the key of C sharp. That's also the kind of thing where, like, you know, if you're going to like now go to college or something and be learning this, well, then sure, then you have to at least understand that C sharp is D flat and know the sharps and the flats. But to be quite frank with you, you're not going to see many songs written in C sharp or written in C flat. So again, I like to like really have that mentality of what do you need to know to get the job done now? There's always stuff that we can learn, right? But if we really just want to be able to sit down and play and pick up a standard, you know, like adding on all of that other theoretical stuff, it's not the time and place at the beginning phase, okay? But like I said, if you're like, hey, look, I want to go to, you know, Berkeley or, you know, the New School for Jazz or Juilliard or whatever, well, then sure, you're going to end up learning about that kind of stuff. But if you're not worried about having that college level experience, or like you're not going to get into a theory class in which you're going to have to, you know, get a grade for it and have to pass, then a lot of that stuff you could save for later. Let's instead work on the main stuff first of like actually getting down those, you know, 12 keys first. All right, so oh, Rick, thank you. I took a private lesson and it was simple and awesome. So I know I did not have a chance to really dive into the chat area and see if there are any questions in there. So if you asked a question in chat, I apologize if I wasn't able to get to it. I want to remind you guys as well that I do my office hours every Wednesday, and my office hours are free for anybody to join. So if you have music questions, join me on office hours. I'll answer the question for you. It doesn't matter if you're a student or not. So how do you get into office hours? Well, the first thing you do is go to the site, okay? And, you know, just go to jazzedge.com and then you create a free account. Now, the easiest way of creating a free account is you could do this, free immediate access, put in your name and email address, and there you go, okay? And I'm going to warn you right now, I'm going to email you, okay? So like if you're going to get mad at me because I send you email, then don't do this, all right? So I will email you, but it's super easy. At the bottom of every email, it says unsubscribe, click there, and I won't email you anymore. Or if you want some suggestions on where to get started, go to my piano strength assessment here. Click here, get started, right? And then you can get in here and you can, you know, answer a couple of questions and then see where you're at. And then I'll give you some lesson suggestions. Note, this is best done on a desktop or a laptop. If you're on a phone, some people have reported that sometimes it's difficult for them to see those questions, so you might have to scroll. So just be aware if you are, you know, on that phone or a mobile device, okay? So anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. If you're not a student, you'd like to join, just go back to jazzedge.com. If you need help, at the bottom right of every page, there's a little orange button that says help. I'll show that to you real quick. Whoops. So if I'm just at, well, let me go back to the home page. Whoops. So, so right at the bottom, okay, you can see it right here. Click on help, and just make sure you scroll down, click on contact us, put in that information, and that goes right to me. I will see that, all right? So, you know, if you're wondering like, hey, how can I ask a question that's going to get to Willie? Write in right there, and I will see that question. I'm happy to help. I will tell you, I don't answer music-related questions over email because it's best when I have a piano in front of me. You know, if someone says, hey, what are the different ways of forming a major seventh chord for a rootless chord voicing? It's a lot easier if I could do that and you could hear it than me saying, well, it's an A, a C, an E. I don't do that over text, all right? This is why I do all of these live sessions. So anyway, you could join, you could sign up for free, get a free account, and once you get into the site, just click on where it says live training, and then there's a link right there to the Wednesday office hours. You're welcome to join me any Wednesday and be able to, you know, get in there and ask me questions. And you can also do the 30-day piano playbook as well. All right, so anyway, thank you all very much for joining me. I know it was a long session. Thank you very much. And look forward to Standards by the Dozen. I will see you guys next week. Look next week. You'll see all that material. I will send out an email. I will also email out the replay to today's session. So look for that in your email box a little bit later on today. Thank you, everyone. I will see you soon.